Alex, you exploited the space well at Sunderland and the team did remarkably well. Obviously the confidence is high, but is that what more fans can expect now, given that you had a team that would come at you, rather than when you play teams that defensive? Can Stoke expect to see this more expansive game?
Yeah, but I think every game is different, isn't it? I think the game plan, the way the game panned out, sort of was executed and sort of suited us down to the ground, really. So, but not every game is going to be that way. We've faced a variety of different challenges this season. I think what's been really important is the fact that we need to stop conceding the first goal. Because I think when games are level pegging and it's quite an even contest, I think that both teams are being relatively expansive to score and leaving themselves, I wouldn't necessarily say vulnerable, but certainly more open than what they would be if they're sort of containing a lead. And I think that on the flip side, when we've scored the first goal, teams have found it extremely difficult to break us down, and we're really dangerous in that sense. So it's not as if it's only happening one way, it's basically happening both ways, which is good in one sense for us and maybe not so good in another. So we know there's certain elements we need to work on. But I think, I was looking at a stat the other day, I think this league, 65% of the times you take the first goal, you generally go on and win the game. I think there's only 15% of over the course of the season that have actually turned that round and been into a defeat off the back of that. So I think that we're certainly not the only team that has that issue.
It's another difficult week. You've got 3 tough teams to play against, starting with Blackburn. They've done really, really well this season. How do you expect that to work tomorrow?
Yeah, I think Blackburn are an odd team. Their stats don't really add up to them in terms of how they play. So they're probably the anomaly that I've looked at so far this season. So it'll be a really interesting game. I think when you watch them play, they suggest as if they're a sort of patterns-based, retention-based team, but I think they're arguably most effective in transition in terms of hurting you when you're in possession of the ball. So they're a dangerous side. They've certainly got goals in their team.
The things at Sunderland were not really very much different to what you've been doing for weeks and weeks, but you just executed things better, didn't you?
Yeah, we were speaking about it for weeks. It's making sure that you're taking the opportunities. I mean, that's the fine lines between being successful in games at times and not. And I thought that we were very clinical in the game. I thought our final third play was really good. I thought we carried a threat every time we went forward. I thought we had a good understanding of what the game required, and we executed it really well. But I don't think the performance was massively different for other performances. I've watched the game back. In fact, if anything, there were certain elements of the game that were frustrating that I still think we can do better. And I know that sounds strange after we've won 5-1, but yeah, I can assure you we've played better in other games and lost.
Do you want to expand on what those things are you think you could do better?
Not really, no.
Okay, but when you look at the midfield 3, you've got Pearson, Smallbone and Laurent. They're developing really well, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they complement each other. I think Ben coming in there allows Josh to play a bit higher. I think Will's been extremely productive for us in the last probably batch of 5, 6, 7 games. And it's not easy to do that. Obviously the January window, I think we offloaded 5 loans and then brought another 6 in. So it's not easy to then incorporate all the players into your team and sort of function as a unit. Albeit you bring good quality players in, but it's not easy to then incorporate them all at the same time, because it's half your team. So I think a lot of credit goes to the players in terms of how they've adapted and how well they've sort of settled into the team.
When you go into any club, you're very rarely an instant success. I think you've been here almost 6 months now.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of the things you've been trying to work on come to fruition? Or are there a lot more positives now in what you see on the training pitch than you did before?
Yeah, but what I would argue is, like when you're saying you don't go into somewhere and become a success, I think every job you take is very different. The jobs that I've had in the past, quite a lot of them have been jobs where they're looking for instant success, shall we say, and the fact that it's squads that have been put together in the hope to get out of the league, have been put together in the fact that they've either come down for the Premier League and expect to go back up, and that's pretty much, apart from probably Preston, where obviously I built a team over a number of years, and then one or two things happen in that respect, in the fact that you either continue to build and you become better and you get better and then you get out of the league, or you sell your best assets, and ultimately that's what ended up happening there. One of the key reasons I took this job was this was a very different challenge for me, and a very different challenge that I was taking on, and the fact that this has been a team that's been consistently in the bottom half of the Championship for a number of years, And I'm a big believer in that if you get all the processes and you get all the structure right behind the scenes, I think it then transforms itself on the pitch. I think there's been huge developments made on and off the park in that sort of 6 months period, which I know in football management these days is a long time, but it's not when you're trying to sort of change the culture of a club. And I think we're making progress, and I think come the summer and certainly leading into next year, I think there'll be a lot to be optimistic and excited about.
But when you come into a club, you're not quite sure of different characters in the club, and some players will need an arm around them, some players won't. Do you think you've got enough now knowledge to know how these players tick and what really presses their buttons?
Yeah, I think the players that we've got in the building, I've got a really good idea of what they are and what they bring and what motivates them. I still think that the team in itself, though, is still it's still sort of combining, it's still finding out what we're good at, what we can improve on. Because realistically, this squad was built for a 3-5-2 system. I mean, that's what I was told when I walked in the building. Is the reason we've got no wingers is we're built to play 3-5-2. I would probably argue now over the last 6-7 games that we're probably better function as a 4-3-3 than what we have been as a 3-5-2, which is interesting in the fact that we've arguably got 2 forward players playing as wingers at the moment. So yeah, I think we've found a lot out about ourselves in terms of what we are, what we're trying to be, what we're trying to become. And I still think, like I've said on many occasions, there's still areas that we can certainly improve on and will improve on.
Do you do a lot of self-reflection? And by that I mean I've seen how many hours you put in at this football club. I see you leaving Clayton Wood at 7 o'clock at night, sometimes with your food. You're very tactically aware. Have you found many shocks and things that disappointed you when you came in that you feel really proud of putting right?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of elements to our game now that we're very, very good at that we weren't good at. I think there's still areas we'd like to improve. We generally do, so yeah, we do reflections over batches of games. So really when it suits us more so than like, we don't do it every 7 games or every 8 games or every 10 games. So we've done it when naturally the break happened for the World Cup. We reflected on that first batch of games, what we were good at, what did we improve, what do we need to improve. We've then done it subsequently since the window shut as well to have a look at areas of improvement and things that we need to make better. So I'm constantly reflecting on what we've served up and what we're going to try and do go forward. I think that's a big point of learning. You know, I'm a big believer in you learn more out of the games that you lose than you do the ones that you win, for me. Because as far as I'm concerned, when we win, it's tick the box, right, job done, let's move on to the next one, do you know what I mean? Whereas there's a post-mortem when we lose as to why it happened, what do we need to do better.
It's not just a post-mortem for you though, is it? The fans tend to remember mostly when we lose than when we win.
Yeah, and that's just natural. So, and I think, as we've said, we're sort of turning a juggernaut round, aren't we? But I mean, it's not as if we've been through great times at the moment, and the fans just now are looking for a bit of optimism and looking for something to look forward to. So, that's my task, is to make sure that we get that.
Phil Jagielka, lots have been said about him, but I think it's going to be his 800th game if he's selected tomorrow. What more words can you say about the guy and his professionalism?
I think the fact that Phil's been mainly a never present in my team at the age of 40 tells you everything about him, really. You know, because I don't pick anybody through sentiment, do you know what I mean? So they need to make sure that they can do the job and they're going to contribute to the team and they're going to make us better and give us a better chance of winning the game. And that's what Phil does. And to do that when you're 40 years of age is some going. And not only that, when he's not playing, we miss him. We miss his character, we miss his presence, we miss his calmness in the ball, we miss his knowledge, how he impacts other players. So, yeah, I think the type of players are becoming less and less, and the fact that arguably their biggest strength is how they impact people around them positively. You know, and that's the players, there used to be quite a lot of the type of players, whereas players now individually do their own thing. But I think if you can affect others, you have a bigger impact in your team. And
he must be a massive influence, apart from being on the pitch, in the dressing room every day.
Yeah, the thing is with Phil, he's quite laid back. I mean, he enjoys his football. He just loves coming into work. He loves training. He loves getting ready for games. I think by his own admission, he enjoys games more so than he does training on a sort of cold Tuesday morning. But that's what he looks forward to. That's what gets him ready. So, but he's been excellent for us. You know, he knows what good changing room should look like. He knows what good culture should look like, and he's a good player.
Onto the injury front, there's obviously a lot of speculation about the goalkeeper's injury. Where are we with that?
Yeah, obviously Matty had to come off, which was disappointing at half-time, first half. And yeah, it looks as if it's a significant injury, so it's going to be a bit of time. So obviously he's been called off his international call-up, and we've brought Blondie back as cover at the moment to make sure that we've got enough bodies in the building.
And Ben Wilmot, because he had to come off too?
Yeah, Ben's not going to be anywhere near as long, so obviously we've got a late decision to make on Ben for tomorrow, but Ben will be days rather than anything else.
And any update on Tesgel, because his injury was a muscle too, wasn't it?
Yeah, what I did say at the time though, Emery's significant, so yeah, Emery will certainly be still weeks for this point.
And Nick Powell?
Nick's making good progress, so Nick will be on the grass, I think, over the course of this weekend, and then it's really a case of just getting as much training into Nick as we can, in the hope that he won't break down again.
And Axel is training well?
Axel's fine, so he'll be in the squad for the game.
And the last thing from me, when you've got young players on the bench like Nathan Lowe, and you've got fans desperate for him to be brought on, you have a duty of care to those players, don't you, as well, so that you can't really expose them to situations that they perhaps aren't ready for. Yeah,
but not only that though, I think, like, obviously Dwight scored 2 goals at the weekend, and Dwight's done a lot of good work recently, you know, in terms of for the team. I think he understands his role really well. He triggers the press great for the top end. He's a good link. He makes intelligent and clever runs for us. And obviously Nathan's a young kid. I mean, he's only what, 17. He's still really just broke into the under-20s team. So I think for that perspective, I think what's important is we don't look for too much out of these young lads, because I can assure you, if he's the best option and he's ready right now, he'd be in the team. It wouldn't really matter how old he is. There is arguably occasions that I could maybe give him a little bit more minutes, but yeah, we just need to make sure that when we do put him in, he's ready to do the business.
Thank you.
Alex, obviously you said you're delighted with the way your team played last week, but one of the big factors was you got the width you wanted, and that's always something that you've always adhered to, isn't it, really? You did get it, and you got it consistently over the time of the match, and you must be pleased with that.
I got the what, sorry, the width?
The width, yeah.
Yeah, I think Tyrese naturally offers width in the fact that he's left-footed, so he tends to go outside himself rather than inside the pitch. I thought Kieran Hoover offered us really good width on that side, because we played Jacob tucked in one on his side, so it allows the full-back to be more sort of aggressive down that flank. And yeah, I thought the biggest factor for me was probably the running for the middle of the pitch, in terms of Will Smallbone breaking between the centre-backs, breaking between the full-back and centre-back. You know, I think Will came away with 2 or 3 assists in the game, and I knew that was going to be an area that if we could execute it properly, breaking for the middle was going to be a big factor for us. So yeah, I think that for that to naturally happen, you need to hold width, because it stretches their full-backs out, allowing him to make the runs down the side. So yeah,
that's something that must please you, because if you can do that consistently, you're going to be a threat, aren't you? Because you've got the support, and you got it last week, not only with the width, but you also got it, as you said, from the support coming in to support them. That's a big factor, Alex, isn't it?
Yeah, I think if you look at a lot of our games of late though, like Swansea, I thought that we executed it there really well as well. I thought Hull, we executed it well, but didn't carry as much of a threat in that game. So there has been games that when you leave us a lot of space to run into, we've certainly got legs and we've got power, and we can damage teams that operate in that way.
Is that, you see, one of the factors then against Blackburn, because they do play with a lot of width, don't they? They do have the full-backs that can really get up and down. Is that something you have to counteract, or how do you visualise this game going there, like?
I think it's both ways. So their full-backs, their wide players will keep their width, but obviously make runs for out to in. We'll need to then manage that and make sure we match that, and then going the other way, they'll be trying to do the same against us. So it'll just be really a case of who does it better on the day. So yeah, we're quite confident.
It's a game against a team really that you've got a lot of admission that you feel they're a good side, don't you, really? But sometimes they do tend to slip off the pace, don't they? And maybe show not that consistency what a lot of people have seen down maybe over this year.
I think that they're the type of team, certainly early in the season, I think they I don't think they've drawn a game, if memory serves me right, for about 16 matches. I think they'd won 9 and lost 7 or whatever it was. So yeah, I think like most teams, there's an inconsistent level to them. I think that's been the league this year, apart from arguably Burnley. But I think if you look at every other team, even Sheffield United at the moment, I think, apart from the last one, I think they lost 3 in the bounce leading up to that. So there's a lot of inconsistencies in this league because every challenge you come across is very different. And Blackburn, I think, on their day, have obviously been a match for most teams, but equally have found themselves having off days. I think Rotherham beat them 4-1 not that long ago. So I think it just shows you the extent of the league in terms of what can happen.
But you've got the platform now to build, and you can prove it now if you can go on a run, isn't it? And that you got that platform last week, and you feel you can build that run now as we move into the last quarter of the season.
I've felt that on quite a few occasions, and it's not lived up to expectations. So, yeah, I'm confident we can go on a good run between now and the end of the season. What I think we do need to obviously guard against is we don't lose any of our players, because then what happens is the dynamics of your team change again. Then you're adding another ingredient into your team which hasn't been there. So we want to try and keep everybody fit, and if we can keep everybody fit and be at full tilt, I think we give ourselves the best chance of being consistent between now and then.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Blackburn, a top 4 side. You said something about Blackburn's stats not quite matching their performance. What exactly do you mean by that? Were you talking about results? Or?
No, not results. Just in terms of when you watch a team, you normally put teams into a couple of different brackets. So you've normally got transition teams, you've normally got possession-based teams, you've normally got teams that are dangerous in terms of when you've got possession, they're a sort of off-the-ball type team in terms of do a lot of the work without the ball. Blackburn's, they're an anomaly in the league in terms of where they are in the division. Like, I think for open play XG, they're in the bottom 4 teams in the league. Do you know what I mean? Considering they're in the top 4 in the league, which is odd, because generally these stats normally add up for most teams, and most teams are not far away from where their stats would suggest, whereas theirs don't, which shows that they're dangerous in certain moments that you probably wouldn't account for in terms of opportunity, a chance or anything like that. But I think the inconsistency we spoke about really have summed them up this year, and the fact that on any given day they're really dangerous, but equally on any other given day you can beat them. So, but I watched the game at their place. That was our first game. I hadn't actually took control of that game at that point. But first half I thought we were excellent. But second half we couldn't get out of the 18-yard box. Do you know what I mean? If memory serves me correct, we really struggled second half, and we probably didn't deserve to win the game, but we managed to win.